o te whatalofa atu ma lo whaalalo le whaafonga ale atinu le nita e o fō. Whatalofa te lau whinga luenga pa ia le tua i o tupu mai o le atinu whapea ma le pa ia la silasi o le au whaafonga si ufonga la mua. Ma lo lava le soifua mauma langi ma o le tato porkalami le tai au ni pe o na whaenloa atu le vai asu tuanai. Ma tō whaatasi le pot whaasala lau ma le susunga ia Professor Gros o ia o le taitai o le Malaghan Institute o la tō fo ia le whi suenga mta opu mo suenga o tonga fitinga o ngase. E o lo whaatasi mai fo i ma le fionga ia alo, Brian Duffy, e pei o na mātaltano atu nisi o pokalame suenga whaasai nisi mon whaamtalanga. Ia mala afsosoni fo i tea o le whaaliwina o nisi o vaenga o le pokalame nei. O le pokalame whaenga ne lua wha Britania na liule wha Samoa. Talofa, welcome. Good morning. How are you this morning, Professor?
Talofa, Afamasaga, Moresi. Talofa, Samoan Capital Radio listeners. I'm really pleased to be here and to be talking with you today.
Talofa, alo malo lava soifua.
Talofa tu la fionga amsanga ya me se fo ele pa yama malo tato tunu mo malne tu la tato te makutai. Talo.
Professor Gros, thank you very much for making your time available to come here. I must say that when I came and met you and trying to get you to come to Samoa Capital Radio Studio, I was very impressed that you were very receptive of my coming and request for you to be here.
Yeah, it's actually, I have a very strong affinity. At university, I was with a whole lot of Samoan people, students in Auckland, and I had a really great time living in the community of the international student. And so I felt it was just so nice to be back here, if you like, and talking, and really pleased to be here.
Right. When I think I mentioned to you that Brian, or Alo is my chief title name is Alo, by the way, when he and I started doing this radio program, and he started talking about Malaghan Institute. We actually been and had a visit when the place was in Hutt Valley.
Yeah.
And then when you came and John started talking about the research work that you're doing, and I said, oh, we run these health programs. Perhaps one day we should get Graham here and we can have a chat. And I think it's very appropriate now that COVID-19, this pandemic's been around now, so we can look at that as part of our discussion this morning. And also some of the research work you're doing, trying to find a treatment for some of the things which actually affect quite a number of Pacific Island people in this country. And
So about 25 years ago, I came back to New Zealand. I am a Kiwi, and my father and grandfather are Kiwis, so we've been here a long time. But I came back to really, with a lot of skills around the immune system, immunology. So the Malaghan Institute is dedicated to studying immunology. Immunology is a new science, but it really centers around the cells in our lymph nodes, those things that swell up underneath your chin or your armpits when you get infected. And it's the system of the of your body that makes the immune response against viruses, bacteria, fungi, parasites, and protects us. It's also the thing that kills cancer naturally. And we study that in all those different directions. Also, it's very powerful, and it's actually can be dangerous. It can cause things like asthma or arthritis or gout when things go wrong, when the immune system hasn't either been trained properly through our life or it's actually been affected by some toxin or some poison. So we study all those things at the Malaghan Institute.
Right. So obviously a lot of the diseases that sort of affect the Pacific community, you'll be dealing with some of that work.
Absolutely. We've done trials trying to understand, can we make a better drug for gout? We know that up here in the Pacific community of Wellington, there's a lot of people, really good people, and they had to stop their job because the gout has come along and they just cannot drive the buses or work the same way. And why is that here, and why is it happening in New Zealand? It used to be diet and all sorts of things like that, but we are aware that some of us, it's actually to do with our immune system, and just we've got a hyper-reactive immune system, and can we just find a new drug to stop it? Because some of the drugs we have, quite frankly, aren't good enough. We've got to find better drugs, cheaper drugs.
Right. So I'm sorry, we'll have to try and translate this part of the interview as we progress so that people get to understand. Alom whainga e so soang in vaenga le fa mulmul alela wa matanga. E peu na mo mai o le mat fa tasi mal professor ya Gros. O ia o le tai po le director le o le Malaghan Institute o lo o ngalo lua I whaingo mene o su engo vaila au ale la tu atu ia alo tala no le vaenga le fa mul mole a alo.
Ia, whaftai o le ua tau wha mamla mātua le sunga le professor le ia le tūlanga le I tūlanga I o susunga o mai. Wo taimi nei wo a matau na le toe au ngā ia me I o waila au, o whala au. O le awa o a matau na ona tā ua tele tūlanga le o le whaongaina o le tino la wala tō. Pe on tā ua Professor Graham ia tūlanga le o immunology. O le ngawio ngā le tino la tō.
E pui ia.
Pui ia. A le tūlanga le isusu enga nei. E tama whai se awala, e wha Sofia le tino e whaia. E o le whaasa o hoela nā tūlanga I mo tupui pui. O tupui pui le se waila au. O le awala e wha Sofia le tino. E pui al tino la tō ia. O tūlanga nā le tā ua e Graham o susuenga le whai nei le la la mua ia ma wha tonsia ia. O tama whai lea. E wa ai tūlanga e mawhai ona maua e whae ngoina fo o waila au elo se waila au o le tau mawhai o au wala e se wha o Sofia le tino e whapena
Whaftai manele mo atu le mo i vaenga o le kaut o tuai nganga se mo le mo i tātou ia manele vaenga na. So Professor, with all the work that you're doing now, obviously you'll be looking making vaccines. Now with the COVID-19, what work has been done at the Malaghan Institute for this?
Okay. We've been working for 1 year now. The government has asked us to form a collaboration team across Otago University, Victoria University, ESR, and other groups, and even some commercial companies to try and make a vaccine for New Zealand. Because 1 year ago, we didn't know whether the vaccines were going to work, the ones that are working right now. So just for insurance, they asked us to start doing it. And we have been working hell for leather. I don't know how you say it. Really, I've been cracking the whip and driving them very hard. And we actually have a vaccine in development on the way. Of course, we learn from all that we now know about COVID-19 for this past year. We know that the virus can change a little bit. We know that the kind of immune response you need to make. And we know that for the vaccine that we need to make for the future, we've got to add in bits and pieces to make it a much better vaccine so that it gives long-lived immunity that can protect people for 10, 20 years. We don't want to have a vaccine that only lasts for 1 or 2 years. We want to make a new vaccine that takes it further.
You almost need to anticipate and protect the variants that will come up and design something that actually also be useful.
Yes, I apologise. People think I must be very slow, but I've been working for 40 years in immunology. I've been studying. I went to America, I went to Switzerland, I worked in big drug companies, all understanding the immune system. And I have learned over those 40 years what works and what doesn't work and how to make a different type of vaccine for different types of things like viruses or parasites or fungi. And each one comes in a different formulation. And so we think we can go forward and make a really good vaccine here in New Zealand that'll work in Pacific people, will work in Maori people, and also work in our community. And that's our goal.
So with what you've developed to date, what stage is that at?
Right now, we have a lead candidate. We know it works. It makes neutralizing antibodies against the virus, which we tested in the cultures. We now need to take it to the much more difficult phase, make it a manufacturing product. And we're starting to think a bit about which of the lead candidate versions do we take through to manufacturing, because we must make something which is safe, but which can be made at scale, which means we need to make, say, 1 million doses a month. If we only made 10,000 doses a month, that's not enough for the 7 million people in the Pacific region.
Yes.
So now it starts to become much more a factory problem. And you have to, when you scale up, bring in lots of other things into the design and development of the vaccine. And of course, safety. we have to test safely all along the way. So we're at that very interesting phase where the gang goes up and it gets much more expensive.
Is the government prodding you to say, hurry up, when is it ready for us to start?
Well, yes, the government is, prodding is a very nice way to say it. So every month we report into the government and tell them the progress to date, and we tell them, how we've spent the money, and so it's a very carefully audited process. And it's not for any mean reason, it's just the government wants to make sure that they know what's going on and they can help us achieve the goals, because this is for New Zealand. This is something that it's an extra job, if you like. We've all putting our heads together, our bodies together to work hard to protect New Zealand and the Pacific.
What is the normal time frame from the start to getting the vaccine ready?
Normal time frame, we're talking 5 to 10 years.
Right.
So it looks fast, but the reason why it takes 5 to 10 years is usually trials and people to see if it works or not take a very long time. What's happened is the government allowed the people developing the vaccines, like the Pfizer vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine, they allow them to do simultaneously lots of trials in 60,000 people, and that really accelerated the process.
Okay.
So we got this incredible safety profiles from 60,000 people all in 1 year. Normally that would take 5 years to enroll 60,000 people. And the governments of America and Europe, they threw lots of money at those big clinical trials. And you say, the question will be, well, do we have to do that? Do we have to put a trial in 60,000? No, we don't. Because we already know quite a lot about what works and what needs to work, we can say, well, that worked in those vaccines. Our vaccine only has to meet this standard in a smaller number of people.
Sorry, I have to try and say all these things that I've been trying to keep in my head here.
Yes.
Ole vaenga le na taltan no nei le sunga ya Graham. O ia ale pene to mo leva ona fai su enga vaenga ia ma fai ona pui tino tangata. Fa se fulu tau sanga o ngalua e ngate Amerika o Europa e o malite minei. O le va ai po atu ai nga tonga fiti e ma fai ona fai la vai tatou tino. E te e nai nisi o wha ama i pe ona mawai tātou. Mai e talanola i e wha le tūranga lo i nei a tātou New Zealand i le ngase nei o le COVID-19. Ia male ngā ruenga o lo la tau whai le tau whainga lea o le tui pui mo New Zealand. E pēla na mō mai. O lea o le la tau sa i le linga toia i le tā penda lo ma whai le tui ina ia wha ngai tangata. A leo o le lana ia wha saunoanga le na whai. Wa maua wa ma whai la tau o na whai tonga fitinga lea. Toi o le tu whata senga o le vaenga lea ia o na wha ngā lo le tātou. A yeisi a wala mala asanga e tau o no o ere wha le nato ngā luenga. Ia mana fisili lei o le ale umi masani o na whai e tui pui nei. Ia o le wha mai tele i le 5 tau sanga o whai e ngā luenga wai tele matua e susu e ngā ese. Ia pefo na fia tanuanga ma le sunga ia alo nisi o teimu tuanai. Ia o le teimi nei. E ono sifulu wafe tangata na whai whaatasi e susu e ngā company ese nei laulangi. Ina ia vave se tonga fiti mo le ngase. O lela o ele la tōtan tonunga. Wa lava le tapenanga o le vaenga le ma whai e o na mau le tūlanga o ngase ia. Ano, si vaenga whaapopo le tali le tampo i whaapula tua le vaenga lea.
Le, Afamasaga le o laua ua e whaapena o na mo mai le au tū o na tamwhainga o na ai ele ka o mai ia le tūlanga na o tu ufata singa ko ina le taipeo
pa mo le tawanga il fisiti
ka su e foi se foi
e foi mo le la o il fisiti vaenga na. Thank you. I'm trying to capture all the salient points so that I want to maximize the time we have with you.
And I have to say, we can do this again, and I think people take time because it's actually very hard. Remember, I just said I have trained for 40 years to understand these things, and to expect the population, the general population, who have many other different types of jobs, to all of a sudden become immunologists, and that starts. And it's really tricky, and every virus is different. Every bug is different. So this is a new story for us.
Well, this is the thing with viruses. We've come through the years when we talk about SARS, the N1, whatever the other names are, and all these things. And how do they come about, these things?
Well, as we know, we are impacting on the environment. And in the environment live bats, rats, mice,
Yes.
all sorts of creatures which have really strange, chimpanzees, for instance, the orangutan, they all have viruses that live up in the jungle. And as we take their environment away, we mix with that, with these, and these viruses, they try and grow wherever they can. And so these pandemics often arise from a wild virus in a wild population of animals, and that's where they come from. And what they do, initially they start infecting humans, and they're not very good at it. But if they can get enough humans to infecting, they start to get better, and they mutate and change and get better and better. And that's how the pandemics go. And because we all live transporting and living close to each other all the time and flying everywhere all around the world, we infect each other very quickly, and the virus makes.
So what is the understanding to date? Where did we get this COVID-19 from?
We know it came from a bat, but the change from being in a bat in China to spreading around in China to then coming to Italy, coming to America, those steps we're still not sure about. It may have been an animal in the middle, but it may have been a straight jump. There are other bat viruses which we know can jump into humans. And it's a constant struggle for life. And this is very natural. I think we were waiting for the next influenza pandemic. We're very frightened or worried that the pandemic was going to be a flu pandemic. COVID-19 jumped in ahead of the queue, but the next thing we have to worry about is the influenza pandemic.
Right. Ole vai ngale pion tatano nei to inga nga sere pion nei tato. Ole na fisiri po fena mafua mai ia alefa mai mafua mai tele o nga se virusi nei amata mai mo pe ole pea. O manu i mangi me fa pena. Ia ole mo o tato i nga se me la to la le tam foi i tong fitinga nei o vai ngana. So nga lo o tulanga le mo o tato fa mai ia.
Sa ole lo pio sanga tulanga na wai o la wa fieta to na pe o tato programa o tuana ya e fi foi e miliona e siamo tato e le mama e ala tato ai ona o sopo mai siamo me ona o tulanga la le fa mai.
If I could just say, Brian is a scientist working at the Malaghan Institute. He makes sure there's a type of coronavirus like COVID-19 that gets into our animal colony. And Brian has the specialist training to make sure that that virus can never get into the Malaghan Institute. And it doesn't infect human beings, but it can infect mice. And there's quite a lot of technology to keep these viruses out forever, but you can't do it in the human population. We go everywhere.
Does he stand outside the door and swat them as they try and come in?
He operates and there's a lot of machinery, there's a lot of cleaning and sophisticated sterilizing equipment that has to keep the mice safe.
All right. So in terms of what's happening now, if you are at the point of where you got the treatment for this, what is the next phase? And is that done here in this country, or do you have to find somebody overseas to package the vials?
New Zealand actually makes vaccines. We make animal vaccines. There's a number of companies that make vaccines, and they're good vaccines.
Okay.
And they are exactly the same technology as making a human vaccine. And so that's why the government asked us to make this program. So one of our partners is South Pacific Sierra down in Timaru, and they've got a great big place, and it's called Fill and Finish. They have the glass bottles. They have this wonderful big machines that actually fill all the little glass bottles up, the right glass bottles, with vaccine, capped it, and then it can go out for production. So that's why we can make a vaccine in New Zealand, because we already make vaccines.
So when can they start this process for the COVID-19?
Once I give them the right vaccine.
So you're still trying to find all these other things that capture other variants.
Exactly. And I think in a way, it's good to wait a little bit because we know about the South African variant, the UK variant, the American variant, and the Indian variant. We want to get a good idea of just what is this virus capable of changing to, and then we say, aha, this is about as far as you can go, and then we make the complete vaccine.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. Otherwise, you can spend all the money producing something, and then you find you'll miss all these other strands.
Exactly. You're chasing the tail.
Yeah. So, okay, I think everybody will be looking for, because I understand with China, what's happening in India, they actually package a lot of these vaccines, but they're suffering under COVID-19. I thought myself, if they're making all these vaccines, how come they didn't actually treat their population?
Yes. There's often a big problem in distributing. Some people are vaccine hesitant, and sometimes it actually, you need to have trained people who know how to inject safely and well in the arm. You know, it's not that simple. Like Brian and I, we can inject you, but there's a whole lot of people.
You should have brought the chap along.
But you need to have those trained staff, and also not everyone is the same. There's always some people who are a bit more responsive than others. Their arm swells up or things like that. So you need to have the people who are the trained nurses and doctors on hand in case someone overreacts to a vaccine.
Right.
And that's
so that's why they say you hang around for 20 minutes or something after, make sure that you're right before you can drive away.
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes you can have a funny day, a stressful day, and that just also can make you react funny sometimes. So it's just good to have someone where you're just calm, have a cup of tea, have your vaccine.
I was going to ask you, how come people react differently to these vaccines? And what happens inside the body that makes you...
Well, just like, we are all actually quite different and specialised for living in different environments. And some of us are really just have an amazing immune system that's very good, which has evolved over many years for certain kinds of viruses. In Europe, plague went through and killed 20 to 30% of the population in Europe in the 1600s and in the 1200s. The people in Europe are very resistant to the plague because it killed everyone that would actually grow it. I don't know whether the same applies out here in the Pacific. Probably because the plague has not been here.
Well, 1918, they had that Spanish flu.
The Spanish flu, that was terrible.
Yeah.
That was, and I think that's what's in everyone's mind. The 1918 flu devastated communities in Samoa in particular, New Zealand in particular, the Maori population. And I think the historical memory of that time is making people very cautious. But the vaccine is the only way to protect our communities. We didn't have a vaccine back then against the 1918 flu. And we have the same situation now. The vaccine is our own protection. It's the best protection for the population.
Alo, in fact, I'm so sorry, maybe I need to know.
Yeah, but I don't know some. Yeah, but on that word to Langale, email or 2 years, myself, I might be busy. Pion ta ua tulanga na fa mai na fie Samoa ta si was fulba. Yo na te mi i o na te mi so enga ni tui pui. Te mi na o te fai mo vai te mi na vai la au. Kai pe o pena to ngale pa ki ngale u. I o ko nga vai kai mi le me o pui. Pe la nga ka o level lucky ka ko never tell me we got the injection, we got the vaccine, that sort of thing. Yeah, pero tu na le ta wa ia o le ta to never tell me ma fai na pa mai na.
All right. So it appears like there are 3 main vaccines being used worldwide for this COVID-19. You got AstraZeneca. What's the other one?
AstraZeneca, there's Pfizer, there's Moderna, there's a couple of others. There's the Sputnik vaccine in Russia, and there's the inactivated vaccines made in China, and there's the Johnson & Johnson, which is very similar to the AstraZeneca.
Right. And New Zealand's opted for Pfizer.
Yeah.
I think to be the...
Yeah. The Pfizer is the best vaccine that we have at the moment. It's got the best profile safety-wise, and although it's a bit problematic to store because you've got to have very cold freezers, minus 70 or minus 20, the good thing about it, it's very safe, and it's a new kind of technology that we know gives protective immunity and stops people going to hospital or getting really sick. And I also want to make the point, people say, well, I could just have a natural infection. There's a number of poor people, or people who unfortunately go on and they're still sick now. We've got friends over in Sweden and and they had the infection 8 months ago. They're still coughing and really have problems. You don't want that. We need the vaccine to stop that kind of infection as well.
Right. Yeah, pe ona mo mai fo I vai ngale su su ngale te fa talat. o le tong fai se tu ai ngā vai e tasi ale fai ngā tong fitinga ia o na mau ele o le vai te e na ia wha mai pe o na i tātou o tūlanga na le tang toi whatalo whatu maro whalo whafonga le tu ma whatasi ma le professor ia Graham Lacrosse e whape malo Brian Duffy tatanol fo i vaenga o le tui pui ma le COVID pe o na i le teimi nei just looking at some of the work that's been done in this country, we're rolling out the vaccine for the rest of the population, probably June to August or even the end of the year. I don't know how your institute have been watching what's happening. You know, some of the people tend to readily accept it, but you also have some people who are hesitant. And that's something that we need to try and encourage the rest of the population to make sure, because if I immune half of my family and the other half don't do the vaccination, well, we're at risk, I guess. That's what's happened.
Yeah. You've got to remember there's some people out there, grandparents, people on medications, maybe have got steroids and things like that because they've got a real problem, or cancer patients.
Yes.
They're not actually protected. So we all have to be vaccinated to protect them from the virus spreading to them. The safest way to protect our loved ones is to make sure that we're all immune and can kill the virus if it infects us. But I think we shouldn't beat up on the people who are vaccine hesitant. It's all new, and they just want to be treated with respect.
Sure.
And I think we have to do a good job of just talking about what are these new vaccines. They're actually not that new. They've actually been in development for more than 10 years. It's only new now on the commercial or the public space. I've known about them for a very long time. We're trying to use RNA vaccines to fight cancer, for instance. But I think it's not fair. We just need to take people through the journey and let them know that they want to protect their loved ones who may be sick from this virus. Get vaccinated. And the technology is actually very safe. It's been tested millions of times now. There's never been a bad reaction to the Pfizer vaccine yet.
Yes.
I think it must be 3 million, 4 million at least who've had the vaccine. So
and then a few other millions overseas.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so should
it's
be
very safe.
Ole vaenga le mato tatanone ye ole tulanga ole sefe ole tui e pe o na tala no le tui le whaunga ni New Zealand e o ma te mine le sisi wa afia ia a le o la tala te o vatu le 2 miliona pe wha penale numero o le wa amatana nga ia inga luenga lea ia ato te si miliona o mana tui ngu ui fafo a e la le si vaenga le ma ne tau noanga a le professor e le tau foi o na tatou a sona inga nei tangata ye le o talia le la tau le tui pui le taimine e tau ona ave ele avanoa e tu se i malama le mafso soni tatou ina ia whamamalama le au ngā o mō tatou uma awai o ina i tangata mātua o whai isi to i ngā tui e ia ina ia tatou ngā lue whaatasi ai mese la to te lo le ainga at whai tūtui ina pui ele mo tangata mātua o le ainga asa alo o le tūlanga na le sanga
sanga ina o shanga msanga
ia
ona o meo tu pui a pianta o e grand e a fia ngo fia tata mai a mesa mai tu mau ma vanga le matu e pe a pui nga ia a inga ato la fai ngo fia foi na pui la to tu langa na le o me ia wai e ia le fatu langa ino tau sanga e ma fai na tui na fua la ma losi o pui nga fanatu tu langa na ramtara
Graham, there's been a debate on when the Pacific community should be immunized.
Yeah.
And given the history and how badly affected they are over the years, some of them work in the front line, so obviously they've been treated already.
Yeah.
But then you've got the people at home. So when the person in the front line comes home, I think it's important that people at home and the extended family should all be immunized at about the same time.
That's exactly right. It's because the virus, it doesn't grow on tables or on the surface. It can only grow within living beings. But still, even if you're vaccinated, there may be a small amount of virus carried over, just a tiny bit. So if you take it home, or even on your shoes, you take it home, you may even be protected. But when you've got the frontline workers, they're dealing with some tough situations with people coughing up all sorts of virus. It's really good as a second barrier of protection to make sure all the people at home, all our loved ones, are also vaccinated, as many as possible. That's how immunity works in their community. Most of us, all of us here in this room, we're protected against many different cold viruses, the influenzas, the flu viruses, the chicken pox, all those things. I tell you, they're really bad viruses if they were alive in the community, but the vaccines are protecting us all.
So that's why we should also accept the COVID-19 vaccination.
It's just one of, and it's better than having the real virus. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Vaenga le molfafong ang letino o le ta o le tato for you to pui nei. Awai o le tele o fa ma ile na ta o ia e situ nga virusi le la ve fu tato o le laki o tato nei taimi o lo ia pui le o uma ona saunia ma fai fu su nga mo o le fai tui ma se fe tato le taimi nei le fu la ya nga i pe o tulanga o le fa ma i o mo wa tato le taimi nei. Yo le le tui le lo fa mo nei tonu mo ni si la la to e nga ona foi fo ise tato talia tato ye mo pui nga tato. I was at the meeting last week discussing the rollout of the vaccine in Wellington, and one of the questions raised by one of the community person there, she does a radio program for one of the language community language program on Access Radio, and the question was, what do I say to the people when they ask about some of the incidents reported overseas that happened with some of, one of those other vaccine, about the blood clots and that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a really good question, and I should have covered it before. With the AstraZeneca and the J&J, it's a different kind of vaccine. It's an older style process. It makes a good vaccine which lasts very well at room temperature. You don't have to freeze it as much. It's a good approach for a lot of vaccine. Now, for reasons we don't understand, at the level of 1 in a million, some people seem to have a blood clotting problem, but it's so rare, we don't really know if it's the vaccine or the fact that if you actually look at 1 million people, you always get something that else could be causing that. It's just one of those very rare things, or there may be something in it. But if you think about how many people, Samoan people are here, say in Wellington region, there won't be a single case of it because there's not 1 million people in Wellington. So that shows you the level of just how rare that is. But because everyone making the vaccines with this COVID-19 wants to be so transparent, they tell you everything, and that's why. So we're all hyper looking at this thing.
Thank you. I must explain this because they are listening for this year. Ele vaenga le mo sila fia le malo le tunu o le fesiri ngi ai fo le AstraZeneca o le si tui pui le lo fa ngai no fa fo ai le fa ngai tato o lo fa ngai fo in Motor Pacific. I think Samoa has gone for the AstraZeneca for some of them already. Mai le ele pole ngai pe on fa li ni si mo fo ni poti e ele vaenga le blood clot pe e mo itangat ai le fa matala e fo e gram la cross e moni o le tuina lo mo nei ai te pea le tasi mai le milion no tanga te tui ai o nai mo le vaenga le ai le o manino le susu enga pe ma fu mai ono le tui pe ma fu mai ono nisi tulanga o so fu ma lo ino tanga to lo mo wai mo ta tola nei New Zealand la ia fo sila afa pe fai tasi ile miliona ia ele a to se miliona tanga ta Pacifica tonu ne Wellington lo no winga e tonu isi so ta tola ve ai le o fa nga fo ta to le tuina o le AstraZeneca I tonu nei New Zealand o lo vai ta to le Pfizer e a to no vai nga nai e ma ne fo I va ai o mo le nga I luma o le ta to alo e se fo popol vai nga le Okay, our frontline workers in this country, where there was a lockdown on the 25th of March, was it last year or last year? the people that actually got the country going were the low-paid staff people and
our heroes. Actually, we've forgotten. We keep on. In those days, you realise just how important they were. Brave people. We didn't know what this virus was, and they were there the front line, keeping things really clean and trying to stop the virus coming across the border. They are the heroes still.
So obviously the government has actually, it must have been very hard to decide who's to go first, second, third, and fourth. So they got these waves of, sort of.
Yes.
But I think they seem to be, on the right track.
I think they've done the right thing. They've actually tried to keep the borders secure so that we have time and don't have to panic. Otherwise, we're going to have drive-in vaccinations and try and get as many, which would be nonsense, like they've had to do in America or Brazil, where they have crazy times. And then you have got the right way of making sure that people who are on medication, that they are observed the right way, because some people, the vaccine won't work until they've actually taken the drugs away. So we know there's cancer patients, for instance, who are being treated for cancer here right now. They must get the vaccine before they go on to the cancer treatment. If we try and vaccinate them when they're under cancer treatment, it won't work anymore. And we want them to be protected for when the virus does come into the community. It's very important.
So I guess from what you just said then, it's important that you actually declare all your medical conditions.
Absolutely.
Before you take this on. So that they say, okay, no, you're not suitable for this right now.
Yeah. Yes, or we take you off the drugs. And that's why it's really important to understand when we hear, someone got vaccinated and they carried the virus through. Well, actually, the Pfizer vaccine works so well. Just about 100% of people will be protected. But if they're on a drug for their asthma, if they're on a drug for their cancer,
something else,
the vaccine may not work. And if they haven't told the doctor that, and the doctor will tell them, go off your medication for a little while so the vaccine really works well, and then you can go back on.
Thank you. Let me explain that. O le tūlanga le peo nei, le tui tau whaamtala ni, I tui pui o tātou o loo so whaasolonga le mālo le nei, e tala whia ngai lana isi sila, i le tui o nei tangata peo tātou, i teimi le na loko i New Zealand, ia na whaalango lango i tangata i front line, po la tui ngā lulua i lungo i le teimi lea. Ia ma le whaasolonga fo i la tui, o le mea la lena tala noni i mo le tui o tangata le whai, a whaapea o whaise fofuanga, te whaise o tongwhitinga le kānesa, e tau ona whai loa, ai le whai le tui le wai tau no whai mo le tui lea, ai le whai le tui le kānesa, e pe ona ita ua, e le work le treatment pe le ngalua pe a whaapea e mua whai, ai le whai le tui lea. Lona winga malama fo i la fo mai i le taimi whasoanga o taimi whai e tui o tātou, ia mo lea ngai i luma le vaenga lea, alo i se me whaapopo i le vaenga lea whaamole.
Ia, whaafutei, a whiawam sanga e tā ua ia le vaenga lea, ono pēa ono tā ua ia vaenga ia ono pui ngā whanātura. A whapea la e tūrangana o lo whaongaina ia me o kuala au po le cancer thing. E le te tauna mua whaongala wai la kuala au po tonwhitinga, e te mua whare tui.
Ia.
O tūrangana e tā ua po le ala ia i tui a ngase o lo tau ina, pia ona tau mua o mai tūmau. Tūranga e mua, a whapea le haru whasolong o waila mua whaile tui. Ta whaaloa tui le tui o waila. You know your work, when you, as was saying that when you're on cancer treatment, you
the vaccine
to
won't
the
work.
vaccine. Yeah.
And so you'll see that cancer doctors, they're really worried. Actually, up here on the Kapiti Coast, people who may be going into cancer treatment, they're saying, oh no, I'll get my vaccine later. They have to get their vaccine now. They'll be given priority so that because once you've made your immune response, it stays with you. The antibodies in your blood can last for at least for a year and protect you, and then you can go on the cancer treatment. But you do not want to take the risk that if you wait to get the vaccine after your cancer treatment, it won't work, and then the virus will come in because the borders will come down at the end of the year, and then, whoa, not good.
When I started doing the health programs on radio, I was trying to find the right word that can sort of resonate with the people. So I said, it's almost your immune system. It's like your army, your defense army inside your body that protects
it really
you
is
from different...
It's quite incredible. Obviously, I've been studying it for 40 years, and when you make an immune response, like to a vaccine, these special cells get made that go throughout your body, and they are absolutely programmed to kill the COVID-19. Only COVID-19.
Wow.
But they just stay in your nose and your mouth, and you want them, and they stay for a very long time in your life.
You know, it's just amazing when we had that discussion, and I thought, how does the body know that you got to do this to protect you from all these things that wasn't even there before. If we look at COVID-19, it wasn't there before.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the actual body, now we're getting into it, the body does its own little genetic mutations.
Yeah.
It really quick with the cells, naturally. We make our own modifications of our cells to tune and adapt to the virus.
Right.
It's really exciting if you're a scientist to see how the body has ways to modify the cells of the immune system so they can target that virus. The only virus that the body has not managed to find a way is the HIV, the AIDS virus. That mutates AIDS mutates so fast, it always takes us one step ahead, and that we don't have a vaccine for AIDS yet.
I thought that's been sorted.
It's been sorted by drugs.
Right. But
Drugs and care and protection, but actually as a vaccine is proven very difficult because that virus actually infects the cells of the immune system. It's one of the very few that do. And so it always just infects the cell and mutates ahead of the immune system.
So our normal common flu, cough, cold and that, it's all being dealt with?
It's been dealt with very well.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know, le mo mai fo I vai nga ni tanonga le sunga professor. O le tele o ngase mwha mai. O le tino tātou e whaia ia na ia tonga fitinga e te e tua I vaenga I le immune system le pio na tala noa I. Ia ai o so soani la I toa inga ngalwenga I whaila tau e so e tonu al tonga fitina e so soani I tātou vaenga I o le tino e te ena ia fianga o tātou. Tau pawale ngase le mo se tonga fitinga mautu. O le 8 e peo na tala noa iai. Ai mwhai ona so soani fuala au mo vaila au ia mai whaonga le teimini. Au lo tau sa idi a se tonga fiti mautu mo le vaenga na. Ia atono le si vaenga le tau fo I te le tata no fo I peo tau mai mo mai o tau lunga o le internet. Ia ma whaafonga mai fo. O vaenga na o le tawanga I le tanoanga le a fo I tātou le teimini. So, the COVID-19, obviously, it's not a man-made. It's from a
natural from the bats.
Okay, because the people keep asking that question, how was this come about?
Yeah. It's man-made in the sense that
we allow it to happen to us.
Yeah, exactly. And it mutates and it grows and it gets better and better and better. And when there's more of us all packed tightly together, it finds ways to get faster and faster and spreading and making us cough further. And a very interesting fact, when the virus we now know is going into the mouse population, going to other animals like cats and things like that, it has to mutate to be able to live in those animals. When it does that mutation, it can't infect us so well, but it stays there in that community there. And in animals in general, it often infects the cells of the gut and it comes out in the feces. So in mice and things like that, that's its normal route of transmission. But with us, it's coughing and respiratory, so it affects the cells of our lung.
In your research, do you look at the type of ailments in the world and say, how do I treat that, prevent it from happening before it happens?
Absolutely.
Is that part of the work that you...
Absolutely. When MERS and SARS first came on, everyone was terrified. And in fact, we were very lucky we didn't stop, because that could have mutated and got better at infecting people. But we weren't spreading around and travelling quite as much at that time when it first happened. So people have been working very hard since that time to make vaccines against coronic viruses. And one of the reasons why it was so fast to make the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine is because a whole lot of research had been done. Done already. How do you make that spike protein? How do you make a vaccine against it? So a lot of work has already gone in because people were worried that this would happen one day.
The process for making the vaccine that you're working on, is it the same approach that they use for making other vaccines?
At the moment, we are using the best standard one, but we want to convert our lead candidate to an RNA vaccine. We think that's an important new technology. It seems to be very safe. It gives us a lot of flexibility, so if any virus mutates, we can actually change very quickly, and there's no manufacturing problems or anything else like that down the line. And also, it's a very natural way to make a vaccine, because you just send the messenger, you put it inside, and your own cells make the vaccine. Your own cells of the human body.
So they trickle off.
Exactly, because some of the concerns about the anti-vaxxers is that currently we make vaccine product in, say, human cells which have been in culture for a long time. This way, The only thing that's actually vaccine being made is actually by our own body making the vaccine to stimulate the immune system, and it seems to be even safer.
What about other vaccines? Do they take the same approach or different?
They're all these older, like the Chinese vaccine. Right. They just grow up liters or thousands of liters of the virus and then try and chemically kill it and treat it. So, and Brian knows all about that. And those vaccines can work, but they're not quite as good in some ways because you can destroy them. You've got it's a Goldilocks. You can't treat,
be at the
just like that. If you treat too much, you destroy the virus and it doesn't form a vaccine. Yeah. If you treat too little, the virus is still alive and you infect people with virus, and that's very bad too.
Yes.
And the other ones where we combine, like the AstraZeneca, you combine the bit of the COVID-19 with a very safe virus that infects us normally, like the common cold, and that is also very good. It's very stable, but it's actually harder to make than the RNA vaccine.
We'll ask Brian to talk about this. We've got all this other terminology.
Graham tulanga leo ese sengo tupui pui a tupui pui pe ona taua e fasi levo o meu o selo kino le tau so a o fai tau fia pise fulu tau sanga o la fa ma terminate de a lenga musu la kwanga le fa ma tupui pui ono meu selo kino pepeo pita le tau mo fai e tau a terminate lo tuisa o a la fa ngai e selo tino la to a vanga i de ta wo sidi boleva u fa ngara to i le fa ma fo ngana ya sola la fa ngara la to
virus
ne se vela vanga mo selo io tino o pepe ya sola o la o ma da sola e fa ngara almeno ma io creme tu sa o se la rotino la ya ma le si va a la ta o io o fango tu pui masani e fa ngare di live virus io na fa vai la ma lama ina io rotino al sono poco e rotino a tu malo si ton
just talking, if you don't do it right, then it actually infect you.
And that's where in the past, 20, 30 years ago, that's where some of the accidents have come from.
Right.
And if you remember, rabies virus, horrible disease, you die very slowly with, you can't swallow. That was a vaccine where they had to take rabbit brains, etc., mush it up, inject it into you, which actually wasn't a very good vaccine. We do it much better now.
Currently, when somebody gets an injection, they give you a card, and then you go and you get a second jab. At the meeting I was at, then I said, why don't you combine it with a travel passport?
I think that's a wonderful idea because it's clear for the world to operate, we need to travel, interact with our families, and also the personal thing. We have loved ones, or children, fathers, all over the world. And I think that's absolutely imperative. We have to find a way of linking our immune status, our vaccine status, with our need to travel and our visa and card and stuff like that. That will come. It has to come for the economic and social and mental well-being of everyone. So I'm sorry that's not happening right now. We have to get organised and we have to do it.
When they open up the flights to Cook Island, I thought, will they be asking if you've been immunised or?
so as part of our Vaccine Alliance to New Zealand, we actually are we hope to be able to helping people develop better tests so that you could just do a test of the blood. Is this person immune or not? Are they safe or not? Yes. And then they can travel. And that would be a wonderful thing. And it's been slow right now, but I think in the future there'll be a test which is being validated for around the world to test whether someone is safe and immune and protected against the virus, and they can go to whatever country.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you very much for your time this morning to coming on board and for us to share this with you and the knowledge, and especially the work you're doing. Obviously, you want to see some more students come through, and I mentioned to you, I saw Roman Wau, and I said, try and steer some science students to the institute.
But Brian and I, we're maturing. We're not getting old, we're maturing. And we need help. We need the young ones to come along and push us off our seats and take over. I really hope that blisters out there's some young people there and say, I want to learn how to make vaccines. We'll always need to learn how to make vaccines. I really would hope they come and visit the Malaghan Institute. And we won't last forever, will we, Brian? So we need the young ones to come along. So
we have a youth program sort of co-hosted by a couple of students from Vic, but unfortunately not science students. So, but I'll ask them to bring their friends who are doing science, and we'll bring them along, and they can have a tour of the.
Look, it's never too early to start. Start young, start fresh, and we promise you a really good life, don't we, Brian?
Right.
Ole vaenga na pe on tata noi fu vaenga mai nei I tong fainga le ole travel passport le tan noi. Ai mai mo pe no fa tasi le card le mo nei pe fa yo tui pui. Ia mo le mo fo ole travel wai mana mo mia pe ai malanga pe fo na sang no ye le sunga ya le professor. Ia mo le tong fainga le walung fa na Pacific o tato ina ia avem ta pu fa sai nisi. Ia o lo mo mia le professor nisi mala malo. Nisi o atu e suila ua pea o le taimi e umai la ua malanga luenga. Ina ia wha ua walanga luenga le Malaghan Institute I fo tono Wellington nei. I'm very grateful that you offered to do further programs on Samoa Capital Radio. Graham, I think it's wonderful when our listeners hear the word from the person who actually know all about these things. They want to listen. And I'm quite sure that for this program, we announced it last week after I met with you and I came in and put on the program that we've got this interview coming. I wasn't sure whether you'll make yourself available for a second or third program, but I'm very pleased to hear that you...
No, I think it's really important. And I think only as a community of scientists and community and people with all their questions can we work together and sort things out. I think makes us strong together.
Well, all the best for the work that you're doing at the Malaghan Institute, and no doubt we'll be talking again on Samoa Capital Radio in the near future. Alo whaftai te lea mo le manea whai oi maselu sui whai sau tau talanga wha mulmuli.
Ia wale le.
It's going to thank on behalf of you as well.
Whaftai atu le pai man malo tātou tu nuo mo mane tu la tātou te mafutai ma la upule le professor. Ma na ia le tulanga le peon tā ua la pionga msanga o le e mana o mia ia ni ava noa se tele. E matu sa wali mai ai ma tātou wha asoa i. Wai dina paulo le wha mai. Tele mo wha mai re susu e mātou. Wana po e rei wha mai mise la Samoa la tō le po e susu e mātou. Ai whaftai mo le nei tū la pai man malo tātou atunu. Whaftai la.
Malo whaftai. I know we've got other research work that you're working on, but we didn't have time. So we'll leave that for the next program. But thank you once again for coming along.
I'm going to have a better shirt next time. I've got some beautiful shirts and I feel, why didn't I bring my good shirt?
We'll give you an island shirt next time.
No, I've got island shirts. I really
I'll tato pol kalame na whentu whatsir tai au nei mo whafuanga le tinu i e musi sia manoto tata nol teimi nei mat whatu wha, whatsoifua.